rest assured, when somebody tells you you're full of shit and they're gaslighting you, they could absolutely
be wrong. Yeah, they also bet against Wikipedia, and like nobody remembers Microsoft Encarta.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is Brave New Work, a podcast about reinventing our organizations and the search for a more adaptive and human way of working. I'm Aaron Dignan, and I'm joined by my all-year co-host, Rodney Evans.
All year long. Hi, everyone.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about what we've learned this year. But before we unpack that, we are going to check in for the last time this year. This is our last episode of the year, and it's our last episode of what was, I guess, a season 4.
What?
Yeah.
Is that true?
I think so.
Oh my God, we're really doing this thing. All right. So our check-in question for today is, if you had to say what the theme of your 2021 was, what would you say?
Doing too much.
Oh, barf.
It was, but not, I don't even think of it necessarily in a bad way. It was a conscious choice, but it was a year of like really letting my curiosity and my hunger drive and taking a back seat on some other forms of like sanity and self-care. Mm-hmm. And so I did just like, I was like the kid in the candy store, the kid at Casa Bonita that's just like, I'm going to ride every ride. I'm going to do everything. And I really just let myself go. Like if I wanted to spend 5 hours on the weekend researching Web3, I did. Mm-hmm. And if, we wanted to like try to juggle a little bit too much, I did that. I learned a lot about how not to do that and why I want next year to be different. But this was definitely a let loose year.
Yeah. Let it all go. Let it all hang out. My 2021 theme feels like it was a transition year. This was a very bridge year for me.
Chrysalis.
So a lot of things changed. As I said to you before we started recording, this time last year, I was wrapping up a 1.5 year long super intensive project that had been almost my entire focus work-wise for a long time. And now, and in the last 12 months, I have been mostly working on the ready, less, fully ensconced in client work, which has been significantly different. We did all of this stuff around my mother-in-law and her estate and a move and whatever. And like just all of our personal rhythms were sort of upended this year. Mm-hmm. So it feels like it was this like bridge year to something else that was a bit tumultuous, honestly, at times. Like it was not all positive, but it feels like it was foundational to something new for next year.
What's the tarot card for the year that would like map to that story?
The Hierophant.
There you go.
There you go.
Interesting.
So we're going to do some personal reflecting, but don't worry, nerds. There will be dank nugs in here for all of our people who are trying to do transformation work, because we're not just going to talk about the ways in which we changed our sweatshirt game. We're also going to talk about some kind of important stuff, I think, in terms of how we approach work and life and change.
Real talk, I did change my sweatshirt game this year, though.
Did you?
Yeah.
What did you change about it?
So we were looking for Murmur apparel, and we found the actual sweatshirt I'm wearing now, which we are getting released in January.
Give me one.
And it's the most comfortable shirt I've ever owned, of any kind, of any fabric, of any shape. And I can't stop wearing it. And it's driving me, it's like a little bit disgusting.
This makes a lot of sense because I've seen you in that shirt a lot lately. And I've been meaning to ask you what broke you out of your all black habit. And
it was apparently a chocolate chip cookie of a shirt.
It's the platonic ideal of a shirt that got you out of all black all the time.
Yeah. So I'll be ordering this in black soon, but this is definitely like, it's a game changer. Anyway.
It's your jam. All right. Anyway.
What I was thinking we could do for this ep is play a game of call and answer. So we each share a learning, a noticing from the year, something we're either looking back on or sort of taking forward, and then see what that sparks. And we'll just trade off until we're much smarter.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, you go first.
Okay. Something that I learned this year is about our company, which is I have this mental model now that is about our history of being really scrappy and having a lot of smart, generalist, energized, amazing humans who are basically like, I can take any hill. I can figure anything out and I will. And like, I'm going to be fucking awesome at finance and awesome at sales and awesome at delivery. And like, I think personally that served us incredibly well at the Ready. And I think it's part of why we are like very coherent as an organization. And this to me was the year of specialization where we just started to scratch the surface of who could really identify their zones of genius. I think you and I are further along in this because we've had the luxury of time and space to do so than other people, but we will all get there. And just sort of honoring and paying attention to the fact that there are things that people have real lived experience doing and can contribute in amazing ways that are also much more efficient than us just trying to do everything. And I think what that gets us is scale in a way that feels abundant and easeful. So my mental model, my reflection on this year is sort of we went from scrappiness and now we're in more of this specialization territory, and that will lead us to scaling in a way that does not feel completely exhausting.
Totally. Yeah. It's funny. I had a very similar theme on my list, which was getting everyone in their zone of genius matters. And it's a funny one for me that you bring up because there's a little bit of dynamic tension between what the Ready always talks about around role mixes and having people with the freedom and the autonomy to move into different spaces of the organization. And that way we get the efficiency of different skills expressed in different places instead of one job description. But at the same time, it's been a really important year for recognizing that just at a focus level, if you spread yourself across 3 or 4 things, even if you are the best in the world at those things,
Totally.
you become like a little spread thin and you're unable to really fully express your talents. And chances are you're not world class at all 4 of those things. Maybe you're good at them, better than most, better than average. Sure. That's what makes you, a member of the team. But I think at the end of the day, there is that one thing where it's like, that's where this person really dunks.
Yes.
And the idea here that we're leaning into this year, and I think really going whole hog on next year, is make that the number one thing and really try to dial that up in terms of focus and energy and specialization. And then, of course, there's still room for the other roles, the other plates that you want to spin, but having more clarity about this is what I'm really gifted at and what brings me joy. Because not just am I good at it, but does it really energize me? And you put those two together, that's a very magic recipe.
Which brings me to another one of my learnings, which is it takes a while to be great at something, at a new role. And that's true even if it's something that you've done before or you think you've done before. Even if it's something that you believe yourself to be good at. What I've realized, because I've stepped into these other roles that are less similar to what I've been doing with clients for a long time, is like, it takes me time to make sense of what's happening inside of a team or circle and what's happening in the external environment. And I ask for information from other humans, but it takes like real practice to turn that information into something useful in that role. And then from there, it's like, okay, like growth is a good example. It took me 6 months to figure out like, what is all of this? 6 months to even start running experiments. And real experimentation, I think if it's interesting, like is going to kind of suck at first because it's something new. It's something we're not good at. We can't just try one rep of one thing one time and be like, well, that didn't work. Like we have to sort of stick into things. And so my new sort of mantra, if you have the luxury in your business or as a human, is like hire ahead. Don't expect anyone to be amazing at anything for 6 months. And don't wait until that pair of hands has to like be really effective to do something about it. Because I think I have struggled personally with wanting to be better, faster at things than I physically possibly can be. It's like, I am a fast learner and I have learned as fast as I can, and it still just takes time.
I'm so often relating our work to personal training, and I'll do it one more time for the year.
One more time in 21. Let's talk about weightlifting.
And I don't even do it that much, which is the funny part. Um,
People probably think you're like little Arnold Schwarzenegger, but you know.
I don't even lift. I climb occasionally. I box occasionally. I'm definitely, I'm not in the peak physical condition that I'd like to be in. In any case, what I do know is that the way we think about work and roles that we play is, oh, if I'm gifted at that, or I'm talented at that, or I have a proclivity for that, I can just like slot in and out of stuff whenever I want. And I can take a 6-week break from sales and then go back to sales. And I'm just as good as when I left. And the reality is like, it's a lot more like athletics, where even if you're a world-class skier, if you take a whole season off,
Yeah.
when you first come back that first week, you are not crushing it at the level you were at before. It's a practice and a habit. And I think that's the reality, is like being excellent in a space, in a role, is about adopting the habit. And once you've surfed the habit long enough, contingent to your level of ability. Like if you're really, really gifted at it, it'll be a faster habit build again. But I remember when I started writing Brave New Work after a 7-year hiatus of writing books, it was like, wow, I suck at this.
Yeah.
And then about a year into writing, it was like, oh yeah, I can write 3 hours a day. It's not a problem. And right now, if you made me write 1,000 words, I would protest like a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
Like I'm just out of practice. So I totally agree with you. I think it is something we need to be way more patient about and way more deliberate about.
Yeah. And like, it's not a reason not to do new things. Like, I am such an advocate for dynamic role work and the ways we've been doing this at the Ready. And
All day.
in some ways, I feel like, as an elderly and wizened woman, it can be very easy to be like, I just want to do shit that I'm good at because I'm good at a lot of shit, and like pay me and I'll just fucking crush this. But it's like, it's also very good for my brain to be learning about DAOs. It's just hard because it's new.
Yeah. Speaking of new, one of mine for the year, probably one of the biggest ones, was that working on product, a real product that people buy without talking to someone, was super eye-opening. I have spent 20 years in services, and services is a game of adaptation and influence.
Yes.
And so, like, yes, you write down a scope of work. Yes, you have a website that says what you do. But at the end of the day, it is hand to hand, person to person, conversation to conversation, pivoting, learning, steering, adapting, all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of the choices that you make are about relationships and about adjusting course as you go. And with product, what has been such a eye-opening experience for me on the Murmur side, and to a certain extent on the course side with you as well, the Ready course, has been, you have to design things with way more intentionality, and you have to be paying attention to real world feedback. But what you're baking is more of a lasting, stand on its own 2 legs kind of thing. And that has actually been really valuable for me, because it means you have to think way harder about who the user is, who the customer is, because you can't pivot on the fly. Right? With the Ready, someone comes in the door, they're a startup, they're a nonprofit, they're an enterprise, they're a government organization. We can pivot right on the fly and be like, oh, here's what you need. Here's how you can think about it. If your front door is a product, they show up, that's it. Like you're either for them or you're not for them. So that has been big. I also have a few, like, they sound like Theory X observations, but they're actually Theory Y. So people do not read. They do not give you the time of day.
No one reads.
They don't want to read.
Ever.
They don't want to do any work. Our friend out in the world of product, Scott Belsky, always says, in the first minute of a product experience, people are lazy, selfish, and vain. And it's like, and I certainly am, It's like, I just like, give me the value, get me the hell out of here. I don't want to waste time. I don't want to do any work.
On the login page, I'm like, I don't know if this is worth it.
This might not be for me. Meanwhile, I'll spend like 40 minutes picking a show on Netflix, but I will not spend an extra minute setting up. So it's been really interesting for someone that sweats the world of work and how we work and practices and principles as much as I do, to be like, oh, they don't care as much as I do necessarily about it the way I care about it. Or maybe they do, but when they come to this context to use a product, they're not looking for this other stuff of, they don't want to learn or educate or like spend 5 hours, staring at their navel. They want to get something done. And so that has been a really important awakening for me. And what's fun about it is I've been bringing some of that back to the Ready and thinking about where it makes sense. How do you productize a service business? and make
Totally.
things a little bit easier to buy and understand and be a little bit more choosy about who you work with and why and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's like baking versus stir fry.
Totally.
It's like when it's a stir fry, which is like a service business, and you taste it, you're just like, that could use some more pepper. But like, you can't
Soy
do that with a
sauce.
cake once it's in the oven. You got to like
No,
put that
that
shit
souffle
together
is
and then
going to
it's got to
fall or
bake.
hit. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Exactly. That's really cool. This might be somewhat related, and I'd be curious if this has been your experience on the murmur side.
Okay.
But this year, I've sort of been jokingly saying that the pandemic has made the future of work the present because all of a sudden our really dumb arguments that I used to have with clients about whether email and Slack were the same thing have just stopped. And like early months of a project being like, please
Yeah.
turn on your video, please turn on your could you turn on your video?
Please
Like
mute
we're just
yourself.
done with that. Like
Yeah.
we've got the hang of a lot of the very foundational stuff that you and I have been doing for 5 or 10 years. We're just not like it's table stakes now.
Totally.
And one of my reflections about the ways in which ways of working trends, future of work trends have really like landed in many ways during the pandemic is that I spent a lot of years in this career kind of feeling gaslit because of how many conversations I had where people were like, you're a hippie, or like you're
Right.
nuts, or like that'll never work here, or that seems like it would only work for people like you in situations like this, or that's anarchy, or that's whatever it is. And also that when you're disrupting something that's calcified, that's old, that is run by people in power, that is patriarchal, etc., like that doesn't, those systems don't love your new idea that takes power away
Right.
from them. And they will
Right.
be like very ungenerous in the ways that they categorize things that are new. And I've had this like realization and this learning in our work at the Ready. And then also as I've been diving further and further into Web3, and I see how people talk about things like NFTs, and they're just like, this is garbage. This will never replace the Mona Lisa. Cryptocurrency is and I'm like, oh, this is what we do when we don't understand something new and it doesn't feel familiar to us. We just like shit on it and try to make those people feel insane. And so like I've come to this realization that it and actually had some conversations with clients who are trying to disrupt their own systems. It's like we have to normalize feeling gaslit if we want to make change to traditional systems. Like that's part of the job. So let's just get some tools to cope with it and hang right in there.
I love this point so much, and particularly because I think in the world of product, it has become a bit of a badge of honor to have a contrarian take.
Totally.
Right? Like what people have realized in the world of investing and startups is if you don't have a take that most people think is dumb, you probably don't have $1 billion idea. Because
Yeah.
it would just have already happened. Like if it's status quo, it's status quo, and that means there's already a winner and there's already a market and there's already an outcome. So the whole point is to think something that most people are like, really though? And then to be right. And a lot of people that are very successful in that space tend to have a pattern around that, a pattern of like, I think of something, people think it's bullshit, and then it turns out to be right. And you do that 3 or 4 times and you're kind of a legend.
Yeah.
And so I actually think it's a way of thinking. And once you, first of all, if you have that way of thinking or you can adopt it or you can learn it, that's the first step because the chances are you'll be able to be ahead of things and create new patterns or at least ride new waves in culture. But the second part of the mindset is actually to thrive on the contrarianism of it all.
Yeah.
To be like, it's not, gaslit still feels like it's coming from a place of, I'm a little bit of a victim of someone else's attitude.
Sure.
Whereas really what it's like is like, oh, it's cool that you don't get it. That's part of why I'm going to be successful. Like that's part of the reason why I'm interested in this is that you don't get it.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like an advantage. So to me, it's a mindset shift of if everybody doesn't get it and you feel like it's really true in your gut, sometimes you're going to be wrong, of course. But on balance, if you're right more than you're wrong, those things are just so nonlinear in terms of outcomes for you and your colleagues and your supporters. So I have been trying to practice that. However, there is the ego reality of experiencing just like the doubt and
Mm-hmm.
the like, is this one of the ones that's going to work or one of the ones that isn't? Or even, is this going to work out on a time horizon that doesn't work for me?
Mm-hmm.
So, being right and being early are not the same thing,
Totally.
And so I do think that I personally still harbor a lot of doubt about things along the way, but I do hit a tipping point where on every idea where it's like, okay, this is rooted now in my body, and now
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer like assailable.
Yeah.
But each idea goes through those waves of like gaslit, a little nervous about it, maybe it's going to work, and then now I'm really grounded in it. And
Yeah.
all of that usually happens well before the market gets there.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I
Yeah,
think that's a super I think it's a super articulate way of putting it. And I think I've only just in the last year been like, oh, your dismissal of this is an indication that I am correct
totally. And it's an
on a lot of
indication that,
things.
yeah, that you're bought into a certain pattern and a certain ideology. I mean, my
Yeah.
favorite all-time quote about this idea is the Steve Ballmer quote at Microsoft about the iPhone,
Mm.
where he said, there's no chance that this iPhone is going to get any significant market share, period. No chance, said
Yeah.
Ballmer. It's a $500 subsidized item. And then he goes on to say, I think maybe 2 or 3% of the market share is what Apple might get.
Yeah.
And that's a CEO of a major multi-billion-dollar company who has access to all the world's information. So rest
Right.
assured, when somebody tells you you're full of shit and they're gaslighting you, they could
They
absolutely
could
be
be
wrong.
wrong. Yeah. They also
Yeah,
bet against Wikipedia and like
I
nobody
know.
remembers Microsoft Encarta, you know?
Nope. So another observation of mine, a little bit triggered by the conditions of the pandemic and also the theme of my year, is a reorientation around rest and recovery. So this year I've been trying really hard to get better sleep, and I've been trying hard to think about how I take breaks. And the way of thinking about it that has finally landed with me is that rest and recovery is training.
Mm-hmm.
So if back to the physical, if you look at a runner and you're like, hey, Sunday is your off day, how important is that? Or should you just keep running? They look at you like you're crazy. Like, you
Yeah.
have to recover. You
Yeah.
have to let things build back up. But for some reason, as we've talked about before, knowledge work is just like, that's crazy. You should just be able to think
Just
all the
run.
time and never
Just keep
stop.
running.
Yeah. And so it's an idea that's landed with me cognitively, but has not yet landed in my like heart. And I haven't fully implemented it, but it's definitely been a building wave this year, is like, rest and recovery is work. Rest and recovery is work.
How many times on this podcast have I been like, go to bed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go to
But
bed.
I think that's, for me, the connective tissue is like, it's your job to go
It's
to
your
bed.
job to go to bed. I know you're so much happier when you're rested.
Well, there you go.
Not just
Sorry.
you, everyone, but you in particular.
You in particular, cranky.
We're all cranky. We're like babies when we don't sleep. This relates to me though. I also had an adjacent realization. So, I have been Captain Sleep forever, Captain
Sure.
Sleepyhead. But my version of that thing is that I didn't see boredom as being important. And I think that in my old life before the pandemic, because of how much travel I did and we did, and how much sort of like stimulation and in-person stuff there was, the counterweight to that for me was rest.
Right.
So when I would come home from a trip on Friday night, I would be like, I want a bourbon and to sit and listen to a record in silence with my husband petting my hair and my dogs on my lap. It was like intensity, counterweight, rest. In now times, it's not intensity in that way, but it's intensity in information. So I'm online more,
Right.
I'm on video more. There's just a lot more content that I ingest than I used to, largely because I was doing in-person shit and I wasn't reading screens all day. And the counterweight to that for me is not rest, it's boredom. And it's space and it's silence. And so I've really made a practice in about the last 6 months of not having a device with me, doing household chores with no NPR on or a podcast on or a 30 Rock in the background and just being like, while I put on my makeup or I do the dishes or I walk the dogs or I sit on the deck, like just nothing, just boredom. And
Yes.
dude, it's like very good for my brain. It's where all my good ideas come from, is boredom and space. And like I have to get through that little trough of itchiness because it feels very unpleasant to me at first. Literally this morning I needed to empty the dishwasher and I was like, I want to listen to the news. And then I was just like, no, girl, no. Just empty the dishwasher
Be bored.
in silence. And then I had an idea for our meeting later this morning.
I feel like we are rediscovering facets of the simple life, but through the perspective of a like post-capitalist society where we've kind of learned all the lessons about ultra productivity and happiness and focus. And if you put like, Cal Newport and Ezra Klein and 4,000 Weeks, Oliver Berkman in a bucket and like shake it up, what comes out, and Greg McEwen, who was on the show, and like all these thinkers, what comes out is basically like we need balance of almost all the things, especially some of the things that we used to think were the enemy or that we were something we had to eliminate as people, like we got to get rid of boredom and we got to get rid of inconvenience and we got to get rid of, peacefulness and quiet. And we got to like make sure we always have a connection. And then it's like, well, actually, that's not true.
It's not true.
We need all that stuff,
Yeah.
Like candlelight after the sun goes down might be a good thing.
It might be okay.
Yeah.
It might be okay. I really try when I wake up in the morning to not reach for my phone and just like hang out for a second and be like, this is a very comfortable bed in a very nice room. Just for a minute.
Yeah.
Before Instagram.
So building on some of these reflections that seem to be about the period we've just gone through and like a reassessment of the way we live and work, I have tuned in this year to the fact that the pandemic has created a little bit of like an AD-BC phenomenon where when we talk about time, we're like, oh, that was 10,000 years BC. This is 400 years AD. Like it was this demarcation in time between an old world and a new world. But for me now, it does feel like any ideas that the world was going to go back to the way it was are gone for me.
Yes.
I don't believe that you can put the genie back in the bottle on everything that's happened. And it doesn't mean that there's no future where I'm going to feel safe or where there's like any rest or recovery. I still hold out hope for those things. And I still hold out hope that like we can put this pandemic behind us. But I do believe that just the way culture works, the way we work, the way our lives are structured, it feels like a point in time that is just, there was this other play. It was sort of like 9/11 in that way. Like there was life before 9/11 and then there was life after it. And that was a window of just total complexity theater. And then this is like the next door closed and another one opened on like what's after that. And that has gotten me thinking a lot about what are the things that will last? What are the patterns that will stick? And what are the things that were temporary white knuckling phenomenon? Like we just did this just to hold on and just get through it, but there's no getting through it. Like what if this is just it? It's the old Jack Nicholson movie. Like, what if this is as good as it gets? What if this is just it? What would you do then? And I think for me, this year was about realizing that. And next year will be about putting into practice. I'm not going to wait for my life to start.
Yeah.
Like this is life now. So what? So what are you going to do about it?
Right. I want us to be the people who come up with the new initials for pre and post pandemic. We'll get back to you all with that. Yeah, I had a couple of very related observations. So I think that realization felt like it came to me very early in the pandemic, and it significantly shifted a couple of things for me. I think mostly because both Ed and my mom, who are like the closest people to me, basically said to me within 3 months of the pandemic starting, like, plan for this to be a 4 to 5 year adventure. Based on history and medicine and things like that. And so I think I just like grokked that early. Anyway, a couple of things have resulted in that were real reflections for me. So one is, you'll probably laugh at this and make fun of me, but any like veil of professionalism that I had before the pandemic is gone.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I fully tell people at work that I love them routinely. I just like, I fully tell clients they're full of shit routinely. Like just things that I used to censor a little bit or filter a little bit or massage a little bit, like it's just gone. I just
Yeah,
lost in the pandemic, I lost my ability for that sort of like veneer. I don't even want to say it was tact because sometimes it was just manipulation, but it was a
sure.
veneer of like a professional mask or character or role that I played. And like, I don't know where that girl went, but like that bitch is gone. So here we are.
Yeah, and what is so staggering about this is you're not the only one to be going through that journey, and like probably before the pandemic even started, you were already less veiled and masked
It's
than the
possible.
average person.
Yeah.
But now I do think that the appetite generally has been lost and there is
Right.
much more acceptance. I mean, to think back 2 years ago and recognize that the idea that a child of yours, a person you created, would come on screen during a call would be like a major faux pas.
Right.
Like you fucked up,
Right.
right? And you have to like quickly get them out of there, right? And now it is not only normal, but it's expected, it's assumed, and it's nice, and it's
It's
not a big
nice.
deal. And so I do think what you're talking about has happened culturally, and in the few places where it hasn't, in those workplaces and those individuals where they're like really trying to go back or hold on to that, it just falls so flat
It
now.
seems
Like
so
it's
silly.
so
It seems
stupid.
like the Victorians still like dressing for dinner. I'm
Yes, or
just like,
wearing a wig.
y'all, it's
Yeah.
over. Let
Yeah,
it go.
like yeah, we know you're a judge, but you don't have to wear that ridiculous wig anymore. Like it's just not necessary. It's itchy.
It's itchy and, and I've seen you with your kids vomit in your hair. So let's
Yeah.
just stop
Let's
the
all just let
charade.
go. Something about millions of people dying unexpectedly really awakens in you just an acknowledgement of what's important.
Totally.
And I think actually the inverse is that people now are drawn to like the more authentic the better. You know, the
Yes,
more real. And there's a looseness that I'm really appreciating.
totally. And the other big realization that I had this year, which is also very related to this, is like, I am not going to do things. And again, very privileged take here. I just want all of the caveats around this. But like, I am just not going to do things that I love to do, work I love to do in environments that are totally borked.
Hmm.
And I'm actually not mostly talking about clients. Like I'm talking about like, being affiliated with like this university or this kind
Right.
of coaching program or this thing where like if you're doing dumb shit and it is going to impose on me, I'm just
I'm
not
out.
going to do that because even if like, and this is the thing, when I talk to people inside of organizations that are really screwy or like doctors that are trying to contend with like a hospital administration or whatever, and they're like, but I love my patients and I love my work, and I'm like, that's awesome. And it's like, I loved my coaching clients, but I can't handle working in a system that I
Right.
see as fundamentally broken, and I am willing to give them up because I can't. Because I know better. I know it doesn't have to be that way, and I'm just not going to like ascribe and prop up and like give talent and credence to something that is incorrect.
The great resignation is not just a set of people not going to work
Totally.
for $15 an hour, right?
Totally.
It is a recognition in all of us of exactly what you just said, which is like, I'm just not going to do it
I'm
anymore.
just not going to do it.
I'm going to do, and the beauty of living in 2021 and soon to be 2022 is that if you do have even a modicum of privilege, there's an enormous amount of opportunity and selection and ways of playing the game that is available to you, and if you have that privilege, you should be extending it to others who don't have it. But the idea is that there's not one way to do anything anymore.
Totally.
You can coach 50 different ways with 50 different organizations or without an organization, and with clients that you know or clients that you don't know, one time or 20 times in a row. Like there's just so much variance and possibility in the world right now that it seems that everyone got the memo on that, and now for the most part everyone is like, okay, let's
Right.
reconfigure. It doesn't mean that we never do things that suck. Like
No.
every job, every role, every effort has things that are hard or challenging or boring, to your point, or whatever. But it does mean that when it comes to like a values misalignment or not being treated like a human being, no time for that.
No. No. I don't want to.
No bueno.
No bueno.
Speaking of values and what we care about, one of my other big realizations this year was it's very easy to confuse in your own mind the difference between I'm really important and needed in a system, and I have a particular way that I would like things to be done. So the reality is that your definition of perfection, your definition of well done, your definition of what counts and what matters is just that. It's yours. And so you have to be very thoughtful, I think. And I've spent a lot of time this year thinking about like, where do I need to be the one that does something? Where do I want to be the one that does something? Where can I, imbue some of the principles or values that I hold and then let something go? And where can I just let something go and not imbue it with anything or not like try to shape it or force it or constrain it in any way? And I do believe that for most of my pre-pandemic life, I was laboring under the illusion that like my definition of perfect was the definition of perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And also that perfect and need were the same thing.
Right.
And the reality is like, yeah, like the business can thrive, the organization can thrive, the culture can thrive in ways that you don't expect. It can be resilient to things that you care about that the rest of the people don't. It like, there's a lot more room than you think.
Yeah.
So that's been my narrative to myself. I haven't fully implemented that, but I've started to in terms of like what roles I hold and how I hold them and how I view other projects, people, companies, etc.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to let go a little bit in that way.
Yeah. I have a very related one, which is because I do have perfectionist tendencies. I don't generally have as much of a thing around letting go because I don't know. It's like in my nature to cultivate other humans and see them do amazing shit. And it's like what I love. And the way that my perfectionist turns up that I really learned about this year is in terms of how I perceive risk. And I learned this from playing this really stupid game on my iPhone. Have you ever played the game Two Dots?
Yes, of course.
I did. All right. Of course. I don't really play games.
I own an iPhone.
Does everyone play Two Dots?
It's a pretty popular game. Like that's a millions of downloads.
Oh, shit.
Game.
I don't know. I don't know why I ended up playing it. Probably Ed bought it. Anyway. And it's a fun game and it's like a distracting game. And I like found myself having a real adrenaline reaction to losing that game. And finally I was like, holy, like Rodney, what is happening right now? Like, this is not like I am experiencing fight or flight from a game that is truly could not have more consequence in any aspect of life. But what I realized is like that is a parable for how I look at a lot of things. So if a client is going off the rails, if a sale doesn't go through, if a candidate doesn't take the role, if, the whatever, we miss a deadline on the taxes at home, like my perception of risk is like everything's a 10 and everything is not a 10. Like most things are a 2. And my like body and mind don't do a great job at knowing the difference of those things. Yeah. And so I've really started to try to like when I have like the pit in my stomach and the heart racing, like I did from playing Two Dots, I really try to be like, let's just take a beat and think about how severe the consequences of this are really. And mostly they're not nearly as bad as I think they are.
This is like a personal story reflection on the safe to try principle that we exercise so well at work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like it's safe to fail, safe to try it's so ever present. And it is funny when you have different styles of approaching that stuff with different people in relationships, in your life, with your parents, etc. Like it can be really challenging and really divisive when someone's like, if we miss this payment, I'm going to die. And you're like, you're not though, because I'll just like send it late and we'll pay the fee.
Yeah.
And it's just such a different way of viewing the world. And of course, the shoe can be on the other foot on another decision or another aspect of life, right? So it's not as if, some of us are great and some of us are not. It's like we have these different places where we haven't learned that lesson somehow. Yeah, that is, profoundly true.
Yes.
So as a parting thought, there are too many learnings to share in a single episode, but as the last one that feels like it rises to the level of sharing, this has been a big year for me in dialing into what I really like to do, what I naturally want to do, where my zone of genius lies. And I think I've been a little resistant to it because I so enjoy working with others and I enjoy seeing things grow and being part of the long-term story of projects and organizations and families and friendships. And I have a lot of stories in my head about long-term participation in things.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, I think what I learned this year is I really like to look around the corner and start new things. Like I like to plant seeds. I like to see little opportunities and then dig and poke at that until something emerges and gather people around little flames and make them bigger. And that, I think what I finally connected the dots on this year is that doesn't mean that I have to go away from any of my projects or organizations or relationships in order to do it. It just means that within them, I can play that role. And so like I have an ecosystem here with the Ready, with Murmur, with my friends and family. I don't need to necessarily make more buildings in order to play that role. I just need to look in those systems and figure out what's next and go do some fire starting. And tuning into that has been very freeing for sure and kind of like releasing tension, but it's also actually just been straight up exciting and energizing because it feels like getting back to riding a bike or something. It's like getting back to something that's very natural and organic, which is like, there's nothing more exciting to me than someone being like, hey, Dignan, go find something neat and interesting and new for us to do. Like, done.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's going to be the theme of my next year, I think.
Yes. I don't know yet what the theme of my next year is going to be, but I think one thing that I have realized that feels like the mirror of what you're saying, and partially this is from conversations you and I have had about, what is really energizing for us, is like, I don't love starting things, but I love making them work.
Right.
And then I love getting rid of them. And so I think that I think the thing that I am better at than anything else is taking someone's small fire, turning it into something that will, be enough to cook for a village.
Right.
And then when it's time to turn that into something else or get to the next level, handing it over. Like I am not an optimizer. I'm not an iterator. Like I don't want to stay in it and think about what I want to be the 0.1 to V1. I don't want to do 1.1 through 5.
Yeah.
And so I've realized, which is also very Hierophant energy. It's very bridge energy. It's I've realized that that's actually where I play, is taking something that is messy or unformed or a really cool idea or a lot of energy and mechanizing it and turning it into a practice and doing real OS work to make it sing and then seeding it to someone else to run with forever. And I think you and I tuning into that, and in some ways not feeling shitty for not being good at the other parts of that chain is pretty important.
Well, and not even not being good at, because I would argue that you can do a lot of other moves. But the point is which move do you do that just makes your heart sing?
Yeah.
And that is, because I think with a lot of people that are high performers, they get too caught up in what can I do?
Yeah.
Instead of what should I do and what really feels sustainable to me and nourishes me. And so I think, the listeners can probably see the connection here between starting, scaling, and optimizing. So if you're that optimizer, call us. And I think that's a big part of what we learned this year, is that this ecosystem has a lot of different organisms in it, and the way we all fit together and the story that we tell when we fit together in those different ways is really important. And it'll be fun, I think, in 2022 to play with that chemistry and that alchemy.
Totally. Now that we figured it out, we can do some cool stuff with it.
we figured it all out, and we'll just check in with you next year and see how that's going. I'm sure we will learn as many lessons next year as we did this year. And that seems like a pretty good place to draw this episode, this season, and this year to a close.
What a ride it's been. In the words of Tom Segura, I appreciate you, motherfucker.
Right back at you. This has been an absolute pleasure. And to all our listeners and guests, you've made it an incredible year for us and a great way to stay connected in a year where we spent a lot of time in closets.
Heck yeah. Thanks, everybody. We love you. Leave us a review. You know, it can be your holiday gift to us.
Put a bow on it.
Wouldn't that be nice? A little 5-star review. We did tip over the 3 digits. So thank you all for that.
A quick tip of the hat to Taylor Marvin for making us sound good all year long. Brave New Work is produced by The Ready, where we help organizations around the world change the way they work. You can get in touch with us by emailing podcast@theready.com or tweeting at us @TheReady on Twitter. As for you, thanks for listening. Now go change something. But first, maybe rest a little bit.